That's fine. Good morning and welcome to the North East Scotland Agricultural Advisory Group meeting. We have our usual reminders to briefly review. Please note that the meeting will be recorded and published online for public viewing after the meeting. Can members joining from home activate their cameras where possible, and can all attendees mute their microphones? Does that interfere from somewhere? Okay, thank you. Where was I? Please do not come in during items unless I invite you to do so. Can you please ensure that your desktop microphones are muted and when you speak directly? Someone's got their microphone on. Can I ask those offline or online rather to check their microphones? We're getting some feedback in the room. Thank you. If members wish to speak on any point, whether joining in person or via Teams, please notify the chair by using the raise hand function. If any members lose connection or have technical difficulties during the meeting, please alert the committee officer, Liam Stocko. I also intend to take a comfort break partway through our meeting and will schedule that at an appropriate time. Can the committee officer please take us through the sediment of councillors present by roll call?
Thank you, Chair. We have one apology today from Councillor Evison with Councillor Black substituting. Members, I'll go through the roll call now. If you could please indicate whether you're present, that would be appreciated. Councillor Goodall, please.
Present.
Councillor Blackett. Councillor Blackett, please.
Councillor Blackett was replaced by myself.
Thank you, Councillor Turvey. I wasn't aware. Councillor Chapman, please.
Present.
Councillor Black.
Present.
Councillor Georgie.
Present.
Councillor Taylor.
Present.
Councillor Walker.
Present.
Councillor Clark.
She's at the dentist today, so sends apologies.
Councillor Crockett. Councillor Crockett, please. Councillor Farquhar. Councillor McGregor.
Present.
Councillor Van Sweden.
Yes, she's been asked to substitute for the audit, so she's reading some papers, I'm afraid. Sends apologies.
Thank you. Councillor Breeze.
I think that's me, present.
Thank you. Councillor Gall. Councillor Robertson.
Good morning, present.
Councillor van der Horn. Thank you, members. Chair, we have 10 members present today.
Excuse me.
Thank you.
You have missed me.
Oh, Councillor Turvey.
Sorry, Councillor Turvey. I noted you when you came in for Councillor Blackett. Thanks very much. You've been included in the count.
Thank you.
I'd like to give everyone else in the meeting a brief opportunity to introduce themselves. When I call your name, will you please indicate your full name and organisation you are from? I'll do this alphabetically using the participant list in Teams, and I hope this works. Andrew Blaine.
Good morning, Andrew Askew Blaine, Brody's LLP for Aberdeen and Grampian Chamber of Commerce.
David Greer.
Good morning, David Greer, Vice Chair of NFU Scotland North East Region.
Welcome, David. John Mackey.
Hi, good morning. John Mackey here from Scottish Forestry. I'm the Operations Manager for Grampian Conservancy.
Thank you, John. Julia Latto.
Hello there. Hi, I'm Julia Latto and I'm in the rural team at Scottish Enterprise.
Thank you, Julia. Karen Cunningham.
Hello, Karen Cunningham, Senior Conservation Officer for RSPB Scotland in the North East.
Welcome. Kathleen Robertson.
Hi, yeah, Kathleen Robertson. I'm leader of Murray Council and I was a veterinary surgeon in a former life.
Thank you, Kathleen. Keith Finlay.
Good morning. I'm Keith Finlay from the Press and Journal farming team.
Welcome, Keith. Kevin Gilbert.
Good morning, Chair. I'm Kevin Gilbert, North East Chair on NFUS. I'm driving in my truck up a farm road, but I'll get back and log on to my computer soon.
Thank you, Kevin. Enjoy your drive. Niall Evans.
Hello, my name is Neil Evans. I'm the Industry Partnership Manager at Lantra.
Thank you, Niall. Phil Reid.
Good morning, Phil Reid, Bank of Scotland Relationship Director for Agriculture, covering the north of Scotland.
Thank you, Phil. Now, have I missed anyone out?
Good morning, Councillor Goodall. It's Lorna Patterson from NFU Scotland. I'm just a regional manager up here in the North East. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that everyone? Good. Do members have any interest to declare? If so, indicate now using the raise hand function and I will bring you in. Councillor Chapman.
I guess I better declare an interest because Ian Chapman is my nephew. But I will stay during the meeting, obviously. Thank you.
Thank you. Agree to the equality statement. Take silence as information. Asked him the 4th of June 25 as if I have no indication, I will take that as an agreement. Speaker is Robert Chapman, family elects Spicken, Aberdeenshire. So over to you, Robert.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I should declare an interest as well, because I don't know if Peter thought it was Ian that was speaking. He is my son, but Peter is my brother and former business partner, so he will probably maybe disagree with some of the things I'm away to say, but we'll wait and see what he thinks. But the first slide, if you could just put that up, please. Number one, that's Copmuir Farm, where the main business started, and as you can see, that's an aerial view taken in the 1960s, and that's what it looks like today. So the only thing it is remotely the same as the house, but even it is totally changed. So I hope you can see the advancements that's been made there. So if we could have slide number 2, please. So this is where we are at the current time. We're farming a total of 2,850 acres. 2,000 acres of that is in arable. The rest is grass and trees. With 260 beef cows, and we fatten all the prodigy on farm. We've 1.25 million pullets that we rear for ourselves, and we're contract producers every year. We have 475,000 laying hens on our own farms, and with 27 contract producers who supply us 52 weeks a year, based from Nairn to Kinross. They have a total of 795,000 birds, so giving us a total capacity of 1.270 million birds. We're packing around 7 million eggs per week, total employees of 90, and our projected turnover this financial year will be 50 million. So it's grown into be quite a substantial business. But I want to really speak about how we've built that business, my personal journey, and my aspirations for the future as well. So, you know, I left school at 15, having failed my 11 plus at that time. If you failed your 11 plus, you were in the Dunderhead class. But I like to think I'm maybe a late developer, but maybe I'm just too thick. I don't know. But I left school at 15. I came straight home to work with my father and brother. Now, father must have had some confidence in me as he made me a partner in the business straight away. So I've been self-employed all my life. I always was quite ambitious, I think, and I set myself a target that I wanted in my farming life to farm 1,000 acres and have 100,000 hens. So we've well surpassed that ambition. Now, I'm one of 5 with 2 sisters and 2 brothers. And originally I was in partnership with my father, mother, and my 2 brothers. Now, when I came in the early 70s, the egg was particularly bad. And the decision was taken that we needed to diversify, and we moved into supplying local shops. A packing centre was built with on a shoestring. A van was bought, and an old prefab building from World War II was built. So initially we sold eggs in the local area, you know, Fraserburgh, Peterhead. Then we expanded that into Elgin and Aberdeen. At the time we were selling under a brand, Mormon Farm Eggs, which I'm sure you'll know was named after Mormon Hill, which sits just behind the main farm. Now, here's a wee bit of a lesson in marketing for you, because, you know, of course, everyone in the area we were initially selling in knew about Mormon Hill. But we started sending a few surplus eggs to Glasgow wholesalers, and we got the feedback from them that people would not buy our eggs. And we dug a wee bit, and the reason was because they thought we were part of the Mormon religion, would you believe? So we decided that Mormon perhaps wasn't the best name, so we quickly rebranded, and Farmley Eggs was born. Now, we saw good growth in the 70s and 80s, expanded our bird numbers, were really quite successful, bought some land. My father died suddenly in 1986, and one brother left to do his own thing. And by 1988, myself and my other brother, Peter, who's the councillor, were farming around 1,000 acres, had 130 dairy cows, weaning pigs, and at that time around 100,000 hens. But Peter came to me and said that he wanted to split the business. Him and his son wanted to go their own way. So we did that. It was all done to say, and the bought out our mother. So at that stage, Ethel and me were left with 130 acres of land in the poultry business. Now, our son Ian joined the business in 2023, having travelled and done the usual thing that young guys do, going to Australia and harvesting and doing all that kind of stuff. Now, originally, he concentrated on the practical side of the farming, but he eventually took sole control of the farms and firstly became farm manager, then farms director. Now that Ethel and I are gradually stepping back, he became managing director of the overall business last year. He is now joined by his wife Debbie, who is also a director. After the split with Peter, we took the decision that we needed to grow the poultry side of the business, as it's always been the heart of the farm. But by this time, the traditional market was in decline, corner shops were closing, their sales were falling, and supermarkets were taking an increasingly large share of the market. So we decided to grow the business, we needed to get one major retailer on board. So to achieve this, we had to upgrade facilities, gain all the necessary accreditations, Lion, RSPCA and BRC, etc. And to achieve the necessary volumes, because you've got to have volumes to supply supermarkets, we went after food service, and we'd always done a fair bit of food service in the past, so we just grew that business. But it was less profitable in the retail sector, and we were supplying food service companies as far south as Manchester. It's a pretty cutthroat business, and being based in the northeast of Scotland, our cost for transport was considerably higher than our competitors. So we really had to major on cutting costs and being efficient in all sectors, because remember, the poultry industry is totally unsupported. No nice brown envelopes. So we started knocking on all the supermarket doors, but it's really tough to get in if you have no track record in supplying retailers. You know, buyers are reluctant to move business to an untested supplier. And although we could show we could supply volume to food service, we found it tough to get the retail contract we sought. But we kept plugging away, and eventually in 2008, an opportunity arose because a large wholesaler in England was fraudulently buying caged eggs, relabeling them and selling them as free range. It's something that would never happen today. But this was discovered and stopped, and when it did, it created a huge shortage within the egg sector. Now, I remember this phone call well because it's one of the defining moments of my business life. I don't know why I was in London, but I was sitting in London. I'd just come off the train when my phone rang, and this was the buyer from Morrison's saying that their current supplier was letting them down badly, and they were giving them 3 months' notice, and he wanted us to start supplying their Scottish stores in 3 months' time. Now, that's a short time scale and a huge ask, but we felt we couldn't say no, so we went for it. Now, my reputation has always been very important to me, and I didn't want to let any of our existing food service customers down because we're all in contract with them. But I managed to get other packers to service all our existing food service accounts. We moved most of our remaining small service accounts to local food wholesalers and milk companies, and this freed up the necessary cage volume. And in order to cover their free range requirements, which that time were quite small, we decided to build 4 mobile hen sheds, which technically didn't need planning permission, but we could do it fast, and that gave us the free range volume required. All this was done in conjunction with Morrison's, who were very understanding and worked closely with us, and within 6 months we were supplying 90% of Morrison's Scottish volume. Now, I think this arrangement with Morrison's worked well for both of us. Morrison saw their sales grow, we grow. That's when we started to take on our first contract producers, so we were growing as well. Our service levels and quality were so much better than their previous supplier who had been letting them down continually. And then in 2010, the Aldi Scottish buying team approached us because they wanted a Scottish supplier for their eggs. Now, at this time, Aldi only had around 10 stores and 2 product lines. It's hard to believe today when you see what they've achieved in that short time, really. But it was a very simple business, but we could see the potential in them, and so started a very fruitful relationship for both parties, which I'm happy to say continues to this very day. So if you buy your eggs in Aldi, they all come from our farm. Aldi currently has 96 stores in Scotland, and we supply them with an average of 160,000 dozen per week. Now, in 2007, we actually lost the supply into Morrison's, primarily because they didn't like us supplying Aldi, I think. And the other thing was they knew we were going to wait to start supplying Lidl, which was definitely a no-no. So initially, we only supplied Lidl with free range and organic, but in 2018, we achieved solid supply for Scotland. So again, if you buy your eggs in Lidl, they all come from my farm. And in 2020, we started supplying their Doncaster depot, initially with free range and organic, but we'll be sole supplier to Lidl Doncaster by the end of this year. So we currently sell around 300 dozen a week to Lidl. We also have a long-term relationship with Spar Scotland. We do the whole of Scotland for them. Fife Creamery, Scotmid, Brakes and Strachans of Peterhead, who supply the North Sea oil rigs. We do Aberdeenshire Choice Egg for Tesco, and we also still do a line in Morrison's as well. So we pushed all our customers to promote their eggs as Scottish, as we feel the Scottish consumer likes to see the salt there on their products, and this also helps us as our options for other suppliers are reduced. So next slide. So what does the next 12 months bring? Continued expansion, to be honest. We are very lucky at the moment. We have a very strong egg market. Eggs are now a superfood. Protein is a big word. Eggs are wonderful. They're full of goodness. Luckily, the salmonella and cholesterol stories are history, at the moment anyway. And this year we have a further 176,000 bears coming from existing producers. So that's guys we've been dealing with for a while and they want to invest as they see the returns are good from eggs. And we also have 5 new producers with a further number of 144,000 bears. This gives us an extra 320,000 more bears over the next 12 months. And this will push us up to nearly 1.4 million bears within the group. We also have a planning application ourselves for a further 32,000 bears. And one of the things that really gives me a lot of satisfaction is that our current spend with our contract producers is now over 500,000 per week. So, you know, we're pumping a lot of money back into the Scottish agri economy. And we're also large purchasers of grain. We mill around 450 to 500 tonnes of finished feed per week. So we're buying a lot of barley and wheat from local farmers. Now, in order to grade back extra eggs, we've installed a second grader. We can do 500 cases an hour. One can do 4 cases, so nearly doubling our output there, and more robotics. So this is a total company investment of about £2.5 million. We've recently purchased Dundon broilers in the den, converting this to pool rearing, which will give us a further capacity for 250,000 bullets. We've recently invested in new staff facilities to try and keep staff happy, and we're currently extending our office because we need more space for people. So we're also looking at building our own feed mill. At the moment we have a mobile mill comes in. We want to have our own mill and a new grain store. So that's a further £2 million investment. So the next 2 slides just kind of show you the growth that we've had over the years. I can hardly see that one. That's egg volume. Now it's quite interesting. If you look at that, that's a fairly steep rise. But if we put the next one up, which is the money, which is the most important bit, is going up a good bit faster. So it shows you we're getting more for our product. So it's a very positive thing. Now environment, slide number 7, sorry, is top of everyone's concerns, as it should be. And we take our responsibilities for protecting the environment very seriously. Any poultry installation over 40,000 bird places must be registered with SEPA under the IPPC regulations. And this takes into consideration the effects agriculture has on the environment. And we're currently monitoring our rearing farm for dust, as they were concerned that some houses near were potentially going to contaminate with dust. I'm happy to report that we're nearly at the end of that and we're passing with flying colours, so that shouldn't be a problem going forward. We're also having a problem with ammonia emissions, and the way we're getting around them is we're drying the manure on the muck belts with a biomass boiler, as if you dry the muck it reduces the ammonia emissions. And we'll also to test water courses and groundwater for any contamination. Now, to reduce our requirement for electricity, our first wind turbine was erected in 2010, and since then we've acquired an interest in another 2. We've also invested in solar power and currently have around 1,500 kilowatts, and would like to install more. Certainly the new shed we're going to build will have solar panels on the roof. We've also 6 biomass boilers and a capacity of 2.5 megawatts. Now, as far as farming and pollution is concerned and global warming, I think farming has been touted as the problem, but I feel it will most definitely be the solution to many of the problems. I personally think it's a bit ridiculous that cattle are being blamed for global warming, as methane only stays in the environment for a maximum of 10 years. And cattle are also part of nature's natural cycle, and we should never try and break nature's natural cycle. They're eating grass, which is a good source of carbon capture, as good as trees. You know, trees are great, but in the first 15 years, they're not that wonderful, and grass is as good as they are. And it also fertilizes the soil, reducing the need for artificial fertilizers as well. It's heartening, I think, to see that even with the increase in the beef price and all the bad publicity that it's had, that beef consumption is holding up and there is a definite move away from processed foods and plant-based alternatives. Burning carbon fuels is the problem. And all the power stations, all the cars, all the lorries, the planes, the boats and the trains are far, far bigger problem than a few flatulent animals. So, you know, we need to get priority here. Now, I firmly believe that this will gain traction in the next few years, and we're not sitting on our laurels. We're going to change management. We're going to change diets. We're going to change the way we handle cattle, and they'll be part of the solution, I think, going forward, not the problem they are seeing as now. So, next slide. So how have we managed to grow Farmley Eggs to a 50 million turnover when other companies have failed? And, you know, I've seen a lot of companies come and go. Now, there's no question that in any livestock enterprise, it's important that attention to detail is important, but this in itself is never enough. Because the poultry sector, as I said earlier, is unsupported, you stand or fall by your own efforts, but it does create a boom and bust situation. I remember my father's given me the advice many years ago that you always do the opposite of what your competitors are doing. Now, we have always sold in quality and service at a fair price, and you've got to study the market, and I've always tried to anticipate shortages and things that affect the market, because when the market is short of product, it is far, far easier to sell, and you don't have to cut the price. So that's very, very important. Study the market, anticipate shortages, and then go for the business. And you can pick it up at money you can make a profit at. Now, I've worked with supermarkets for many, many years, and, you know, they get a pretty bad press with farmers, and they're certainly tough to deal with. There's no question about that. But I don't think they're really any different from any other business because, you know, they want to get the best deal they can. But it's very important, I think, and a lot of farmers don't know this, but you've got to know your cost of production. And if you've reached this point, you've got to say to the buyer, look, I can't go no further, and you've got to be prepared to walk away. Because if you don't do that, they'll just screw you completely into the ground. But one man's crisis is most definitely another man's opportunity. And I well remember Edwina Currie's infamous statement in 1988, and that's how long ago it was, about salmonella in eggs. Now, while there was most definitely a problem, we can't deny that, the way the government handled it was very unfortunate. Now, at the time, there was a feeling, because there was a nurses' strike on, that the government made that statement because they wanted to take some of the political heat off. And my God, did it do that. I mean, the press and the TV was full of it for weeks. But the egg market collapsed, you know, overnight. People's livelihoods were lost, you know, businesses went bust. But as I said earlier, there are always opportunities. And the company that had taken on Aberdeen and Northern Mart's egg packing operation when they moved from Aberdeen to Thainstone was in financial trouble. We bought the business when things were really tough. We turned it around, and the following year was one of the best we have ever had financially. Now, I've used this strategy on other occasions. In 2012, the EU directive banned the use of conventional, what used to be called battery cages. Now, as a company, we were well ahead of the game, and we installed our first colony cages in 2007. So we were the first in Scotland to do this and one of the first in the UK. This put us well ahead of our competitors, and it gave us a strong marketed advantage. Because this was an EU directive, all European countries had to comply. This again created a shortage of eggs, and we managed to acquire some extra business because we had the egg and our competitors didn't. Again, anticipating the market. Now, the usual life of a cage system is 20 to 25 years. But in 2019, there was a petition raised to encourage supermarkets to go cage-free. So all major supermarkets have signed up to this, and they will stop selling caged eggs by the end of this year. Now, this has meant as an industry, we've had to replace a lot of bad places. So we've had to invest heavily in barn and free-range systems. So that's part of the growth that we're seeing. Now, on the back of this commitment and to ensure the producer gets the return, because we went to the buyer and said, you know, you've got to encourage farmers to invest. The risks are too high, the returns are too low. So we've managed to get a 5-year rolling deal with all our main contracts. Remember, traditionally, it was 6 or 12 months, so 5 years is groundbreaking. And we've also got a cost tracker incorporated, which protects the producer's margin, and that's the important thing. Costs go up or down, the price will change, but the margin stays the same. So that's revolutionized the whole thing, and that's why we're getting more and more farmers wanting to build sheds for us. Now, one thing the supermarkets don't like is empty shelves. Empty shelves don't make them any money. So I've found over the years that the best returns in farming are made during a shortage. And you can see the same thing happening today in the beef industry with record returns from a shrinking beef herd. Farmers are keeping less and less cows, it's a big problem. But I find supermarkets, they don't mind paying a good price for their produce, but they must always be competitive. That's the important thing to remember. And certainly the discounters will never allow themselves to be undersold. So farmers must be a lot smarter and use this to their advantage and not overproduce. Right, slide number 9. Right, up until now I've concentrated mostly on the past, and so I thought I would finish with some of my views for the future of farming. Now, I believe the future of farming is very positive. At the end of the day, people always have to eat. They don't need to drive a car, they don't need to buy a TV, but they've always got to eat. And there's a huge swing back to natural foods, which is very positive. Ultra-processed foods, and this includes many plant-based products, are in decline. People are eating out less and they're treating themselves to a high-value product like meat more often at home. Now, this move back to a more natural diet must be positive for farming. There will be big opportunities in renewables as well as the move to be carbon-free continues. Now, in the UK and Scottish governments are to meet their targets to be carbon neutral, they must encourage farmers to invest in wind and solar power, and I'm sure that will come soon. Battery storage is another huge sector, as we must ensure the lights always stay on during the summer. Back at high prices when demand to be. We must remember that land development should be and they must be encouraged in states. Now, they must be. I'm happy to see that the practice of buying up farms is hard to make because it is, and it actually breaks my heart to see good land planted in trees. It's a total waste. The beautiful countryside we all enjoy and visitors come to see is all because of the efforts of farmers, and we must never stop telling this story whenever we can. Now, one of the major challenges, and it's a huge challenge, is staff. Now, as farmers, we're far too often glass half empty people. We've got a tremendous story to tell, and we must be a lot more positive if we're going to encourage young people into farming. Livestock farming is a 7-day-a-week job, and there's no way around that. And although it's very rewarding, it's increasingly difficult to get people to work on a weekend, even when you work a rota system. Now, I don't know what it is about young people, and I don't want to decry. We have a lot of good young staff. We've got 90 staff, and we've got a lot of really good staff. But it's so difficult. Most of that 90 are people who have been with us quite a while, and it's really, really difficult to motivate people. I don't know what it is because they're always on their phones and they're always on the internet. But it's the work ethic has gone to a large extent, and it's so sad to see, because it was one of the things I think that we had in the North historically, and it's disappearing fast. So, if invested heavily in robotics, Robots are great, they really are, and young people like robotics because, you know, you're standing, pressing buttons and you're actually physically doing the job. So it helps staff retention, robotics, but, you know, not everything can be done with a robot. So we'll always need people, but, you know, I think the trend into robotics will continue, and the day, I'm sure, the driverless tractor is not far away. So progress is being made. I'm not sure if I said this, but I maybe missed this. But the government's also closed the visa system for foreign workers to work in agriculture, and this is a huge problem as well because we were managing to get good people from abroad, but that's been closed as well. So it's going to stop farmers expanding because if you don't have people, you can't expand. So it needs to be addressed. And I think the planning system as well is hampering farmers' ambitions to expand. It needs to be simplified. We have currently planning application for a 32,000 bird free range. But with the planners for 12 months. Now it's only recently been approved, but I mean it's pretty ridiculous that I think. There were no objections to this application. The only problem being a neighbour who was concerned about the water supply to the building. Even though that supply was coming from my own well, it only feeds my farm, it doesn't feed the house he stays in. But the planners seem to consider his objection, you know, valid objection is great, but, you know, is that a valid objection? I don't know. Building a shed in the countryside to produce food should not be controversial. That's what they have to do. And where there's no objection, surely this can be granted on a reasonable timescale. Planners say they are overworked and there's far too little of them doing the job. So why make them ever more complicated and burdensome, making the process even longer and doing work? Let's simplify the thing. Let's make it easier. The UK government has pledged to review the planning system, and Scotland must follow suit and encourage possible business to invest and expand because we've got to grow the economy. That's what we ran by for that. In my opinion, soil structure and fertility will become more important, and the move to more regenerative style of farming will continue. It's just doing what our forefathers did, basically, and this will benefit livestock. There's nothing better for soil structure than muck. Now, artificial intelligence is coming. What it will bring to farming, I'm not sure. But already there is poultry companies speaking about AI technology to monitor birds, to constantly watch them to see what their behaviour is, what the temperature in the shed is, what their water and feed consumption is, and ensure that bird welfare is kept to the highest level. It will then notify the farmer if anything is out of set parameters. It can also constantly monitor the ventilation system, so improving air quality in the surrounding area. We'll still need people, that's for sure, but it will take away a lot of the drudgery and make farming more attractive to the younger generation. Now, inheritance tax and succession is a big topic at the moment. Now, it cannot be right, I think, that we have 80-year-old farmers sitting in assets and failing to hand them over control to the next generation. The tax changes proposed by the UK government, I feel, are not without some merit. And if it forces elderly farmers to look at succession and handing over their business at an earlier age, this would be a good outcome. But where the UK government have got it very wrong is at the level they have set where the tax starts. 1 million is nothing. So if they raise that to at least 5 million, and the other problem is the introductory period is far too quick. You can't make changes as quick as that. So it should be at least 2030 before it starts, and this would give farmers time to make changes. It is unfair to take a new tax regime in without decent timescales. Businesses have got to have time to make changes. Now, there's no question in my mind that land values have been driven up by outside influences buying land to avert paying inheritance tax, and we've all seen big businesses doing that. But I find land values difficult because I well remember back in 1985 after the disastrous harvests when land values fell and banks withdrew their overdraft facility because it didn't cover the value of the land, didn't cover the overdraft. So whilst I think it would be a good thing for the younger generation if land values fall, enable them to get into farming, we must be careful that existing businesses do not suffer as a consequence. Now, governments need to be more supportive of farming in general. They take food security far, far too lightly. The world is becoming more and more unstable through conflict and war. Food security must become one of their top priorities. I hope so anyway. But they sign up to trade deals without giving thought to their wider implications. And an example of this is the recent trade deal they've done with America, where they reduced the levy on American ethanol. This deal looks like it's going to close both ethanol plants in the UK. And the two plants between them bought more than 1 million tons of UK grain. And that's all going to disappear. They also produced a huge amount of animal feed as a byproduct, and this will be lost to the livestock industry as well. They need to look at the joined up figures from the picture when they do these deals. We've all seen global warming, so it's also going to be a huge problem by lots of things going forward. And we've seen it in the northeast this year with low soil moisture contents. And this has caused serious problems for the arable and vegetable sectors, with malting barley screenings failing to meet standards. And this on top of very, very low grain prices. It's an unsustainable situation. As farmers, we want to produce food, but we cannot continue when the risks are so high and returns are so low. The Chancellor is going to have another budget in November, and she must not put more pressure on farmers who she seems to think are all loaded with cash and are an easy target. They must be. They may be asset rich, but many of them are definitely cash poor. Now, this last slide shows our future. It's my son Ian and his wife Debbie, and their 3 wee lassies: Megan, who's 7, Molly, who's 5, and Emma, who's 2. And I can tell you, I'm a very proud grandpa. Thank you. I hope you've enjoyed my wee talk, and delighted to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Well, I think I can say on behalf of the NESAG, thank you for that presentation. It's been very inspirational, and some of the points you've brought out we've discussed before, but yes, it's a wake-up call not only to farmers but to government too. There's so much needs to be changed. There's so much potential in agriculture for employment, for wealth creation, and ever since Brexit, in my view, it's been lost. But thank you for that, and we'll open up the floor to questions. We have, I think, one. Fatima, you have a question?
Yes, thank you. I have 3, and thank you so much for that presentation. It was very detailed, and I do also share the chair's comments around, you've mentioned really important salient topics such as government policy, you know, conflict and the consequences it has on food security and, you know, global warming as well. So you've gone into a lot of detail, because I was actually going to ask how you felt immigration and Brexit impacted your workforce, but you already answered that, and that's been negative, clearly. So the questions I'm left with, so I was really interested in what you mentioned about taking your environmental responsibilities seriously. And we saw that through the investments you highlighted. You showed us that you've been installing wind, solar and biomass systems. So I'm really curious to see how much of the farm's total energy demand is now met through renewable sources. And is any excess energy generated back to the local grid? Because I'm also concerned about, you know, community benefits in that aspect as well. We've talked about community benefits in the past on this as well. You have highlighted another question. Is it okay if I give more than one at a time, and you can answer them all? Would that be okay, Chair, as well?
Yes.
Okay, so my second question, you also highlighted investing, you know, heavily in robotics. You know, our future does look like it's going to be heavily impacted by technology. So I'm looking, you mentioned on your very first slide that you've got a workforce of about 90 people as well. So I'm just looking to understand what sort of training and apprenticeships you're offering your workforce to prepare for this future. It might be good practice for other people to learn from you as well. And you also mentioned something that I do sympathise with you on, and that's transportation costs. I have spoken to a local farmer in my area as well about this, and I just want to understand if you're you feel your concerns are being addressed and you're getting better support as well regarding transportation costs, you know, particularly when you're, you mentioned that you also transport to areas like Manchester, for example. And my final question, sorry about this, it was a very interesting and heavily detailed presentation. You also mentioned that you've got planning application in for 32,000 birds. I just want to know which local authority is this for? Thank you.
Okay, Fatima, thank you very much for all that. I'll try and give them all a fair answer. What was the first one again? I've forgotten. What was the first question?
I can repeat.
Yeah, please, please.
I do apologise as well because I didn't really, I just wrote bullet points, so I sort of went on a bit of a speech. But so my first question, yeah, so I was interested in environmental.
Yes. Yes.
So
yes.
How much of this is being met by renewable sources, and is it being fed back to the local grid in
yes.
excess?
Thank you, thank you. I started taking notes when she started saying you 2 or 3 questions, but I didn't take the first one. Yes, when the wind blows, the turbine on the main farm powers the whole farm, but it obviously varies a bit depending on wind, and that's why we put solar panels on the roof, because we want to obviously produce as much energy as we possibly can. We're looking at a battery storage facility, and I'm sure we'll have that in the next 12 months, because, you know, obviously the wind certainly blows 24 hours a day. One of the great things we have in Banff and Buchan is good wind speeds. So, you know, we're producing energy at night as well. So if we can store that and feed it back into the grid, that's what we intend to do. But yes, we are producing more electricity than we can use, and we certainly put that back into the grid whenever we can. So that's the plan there. As far as transport goes, yes, you know, we are at a disadvantage where we are. We're too far away from the central belt where most of our eggs go. The Aberdeen bypass has been a huge help to us. It cut about an hour off each lorry's journey, so that's been a big, big benefit. But it's just been far, far too late in coming. It should have been there 30 years ago, maybe even 50 years ago. But, you know, we can't complain about it now. It's wonderful. As a company, one of the things we do is we work very closely with Gray and Adams and Fraserburgh. We buy all our trailers from there. And we've been buying double-decker trailers. So in a double-decker trailer, you can get 44 pallets in. And a normal conventional trailer is 26, 28 maximum. So, you know, we've been able to cut our transport costs. Food miles are reduced, emissions are reduced, costs are reduced, so it's a positive story. But yes, I mean, roads in Aberdeenshire are, you know, they could be better for sure. You know, there's too many potholes. But to be fair, you know, when I go down to Angus and it's even worse down there, I think so. So yes, things could be better, but, you know, I think the bypass has been a huge help. The planning application was with Aberdeenshire Council. You know, I do feel that planning is far, far too burdensome. You know, it needs to be simplified. It needs to be a lot cheaper as well, because, you know, a planning application is costing in the guts of 20k now. And we've got so much reports to do. Everybody wants a report. Always slows everything down. Like I said, really, is producing food in the countryside that controversial? I don't think so. I mean, the environment is very, very important to us. Of course it is. And we stay where we produce the food. So we want the environment to be the best it can. And I have no problem with SEPA monitoring our sheds and keeping control of everything we do. But really do the planning application. If need to go into huge detail, if SEPA are doing all that anyway. Let's simplify the whole thing. Let's make it easier for applicants. Let's make it cheaper. Let's get people investing. Let's get people, you know, creating jobs and wealth. That's what we all need, surely. So, you know, the planning system, I have a wee bit of bee in my bonnet about it. I do honestly feel that it's far, far, far too burdensome at the moment. So hopefully that's answered you, Fatima.
Yeah, just one more. It's robotics. I mentioned is the future. Sorry, Chair, I can see that sigh. Thank you. So it's robotics. So I just wanted to see what sort of investment you're doing for the workforce.
Well, robotics are very interesting because, you know, one of the things that a lot of people are concerned when you start speaking about robotics is it's going to destroy their jobs. And one of the things we were lucky because we're a fairly fast growing company, we could put robotics in and no one has lost their job in farm lay eggs because of a robot. And you've got to take the staff with you. You know, you can't force them down that road. You've got to explain it to them. We do training in-house mostly. Obviously, when a company installs a robot, they come with their engineers and their technical people, and they explain it all to the staff and management. And between us, you know, we sorted out with a really good maintenance team. Because robots are great when they're working, but they do break down occasionally and they do need maintenance and they do need looking after. But they're always there on a Monday morning, and that's the big difference between them and people. So, you know, robotics is definitely the way to go. They're not cheap, you know, to be honest. If you could get good, reliable people, I wouldn't bother with robots. But, you know, we can't get good, reliable people. So we need more and more robots. As a business growing fast, you know, if we can't get people, what's the solution? The solution is robots. So yeah, definitely the way forward.
Thank you for that answer. Your comments on robots are it's something that's going to have to be developed. We've got to look at it carefully. I hope you have no Terminators on your farm because that would be a wee bit too far. But yeah, next question is Kathleen Robertson.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Really, really interesting. I've got sort of 3 questions. Again, you covered a lot of the things I was going to ask, so I don't need to repeat them. But one of the things was you did mention quite rightly that a lot of business and industries, one of the biggest areas where we can't or we're not managing our global targets is in fleet management. I quite agree. Flatulent cows are not contributing to the same extent as our vehicles, and I'm just wondering if you're moving towards electric or hydrogen or any consideration for the future for that. My second one, which is where I've met you before, Robert, is, and you didn't mention it in your talk, is the impact that you have experienced both from a cost perspective but also from the mental health of your staff, is the impact of bird flu. I just would like to understand, that's where, as I say, I've met you before. And my third question is really to this group, is how can we support farmers? We've talked about the food security, and we all know the North East has been battling for the energy security argument. Surely, as a North East, we could be fighting as a group to lobby on food security. And I'm just wondering, is there a role for us to support Robert? And what would they ask of you, Robert, for us to do to make sure that food security is high up on the agenda of government?
Yeah, well, thank you, Kathleen. I mean, we haven't invested anything really with a few electric cars and things, but you know, we haven't really done anything on the farm yet. I mean, hydrogen has certainly got potential where you're producing your own energy, you know, because hydrogen takes quite a bit of energy or green hydrogen does anyway. So, you know, it's certainly something we're keeping an eye on. But the technology, you know, I keep reading about these hydrogen buses in Aberdeen continually breaking down. So I don't know why they're breaking down, whether that's anything to do with hydrogen. Maybe it's not. But, you know, we don't want to be jumping into some technology that's not proven yet. But, you know, certainly when you look at the way JCB as a company is going to go, they definitely see hydrogen as the fuel of the future. So it's a wee bit, I think, like, you know, when 8-track CDs and VHS and all this kind of stuff, if you go with the wrong technology and you get it wrong, it can cost you dearly. So at the moment, we're sitting a wee bit on the fence, but certainly all our lorries are Euro 6 and all this kind of stuff. They're all up to date. And, you know, to be honest, these modern lorries are so clean nowadays that they actually, if you're in the middle of a town, they actually say the air they draw in is more polluted than the air they pump out. So they're actually cleaning the air as they go. But your comment about bird flu is very, very valid. You know, we've had, unfortunately, bird flu twice. And the effect on staff is really, you know, quite dramatic. You know, it is a absolute soul-destroying disease because, you know, you can have, you know, when it starts, you might have 5 dead birds. The next day, you'll have 500, and the next day, you'll have 5,000. And it just goes through them like you don't believe. And the staff, of course, blame themselves and say, you know, what did I do wrong? And honestly, you know, we do everything we can to keep it out where security is as high as we can make it. But, you know, the secret's in the name. They're free-range birds, and they can go outside. And, you know, if you get a bird that's got bird flu outside, you know, they're going to take it back in. So how you stop that, you can't really. But, I mean, we've got to support staff when it happens, you know, we do. But it is very devastating on their mental health. And I mean, mental health is another huge issue in farming. You know, so many farmers, you know, work themselves, and it's really, you know, it's quite difficult, you know, if you're not making a lot of money and you're working your guts out, and you know, it can definitely get you down. There's no question about that. And you know, there's a lot less in places where farmers can interact. You know, it's just this whole society's changed. Everything's on the internet, and you know, people don't meet the same, don't go out the same. You know, the days when there was a local dance in the village hall, and you know, everybody went there, and you know, it doesn't happen anymore. So yeah, so mental health is something we most definitely need to keep a close eye on. I mean, your comment about food security, you know, I honestly despair when I, you know, see some of the things that the UK government. I mean, we're lucky in Scotland, I think, because the Scottish government, to give them their due, have been a lot more supportive of production. So, you know, I think they're doing a better job than the UK. I mean, the total passion to rewild and plant trees and good agricultural land. Really? You want to be doing that? There's a place for trees. There's definitely a place for trees. There's a place for rewilding. We all have corners. We all have bits of unproductive fields that we can do things on. But good arable land that can produce food, should produce food. It's so important. And food security, I hope, will become more and more of a political issue going forward, because we take it for granted. We expect to go into the supermarkets and always find the shelves full. There might well be a day coming down the road when that will not happen. And believe you me, when that happens, the government will not know what hits them, because, you know, people will not accept that as a situation, you know. So, you know, big problems if they don't take food security on board.
Well, thank you for that. And your point in food security is so very important. And it's something that all politicians are going to have to pay attention to in the future, as well as your points that we really shouldn't be taking arable land out of the system by rewilding too much. There is always places, around about me, I see bits and places that could be rewilded. And that's the way to go, in my view. Right, Kevin, you had your hand up, but, oh, sorry, Kathleen, do you want to come back?
Yeah, it's really just to ask you, Chair, for this group, what can we do? How can we raise the profile of food security? I think it's important that we don't just become a talking shop. If we're a group, we should be doing something.
I'd agree with that. And I had a quick word with Keith, and what we've discussed between us is we'll take this off table, maybe have a word with a few others, and bring this back as an action to the next meeting. And we'll get something together and take it to the group and see how they feel about it. But if anyone in the group wants to contribute on this topic, please contact myself or Keith, and we'll try and take that forward. Kevin, you hand up and it went down. Are you able to?
I took it down because my question was about bird flu and how did Robert cope with the constant threat of bird flu. But I thought, and it was partially covered, but he touched on planning as well. And I do wonder about the relevance of some planning objections. I remember we had a planning application in Kintua, and a few of the objections came from AFAD, and you think, how relevant is that, and is that taken into account? You can answer that, Chair. But Robert, I think, like you mentioned, supply and demand and farmers not knowing their costs and things. I think if we're finally seeing the light, because the supply and demand of spring barley, it's oversupplied just now. It's a poorer quality, and people aren't getting it away. And a lot of farmers are growing oilseed rape for the first time when they would have never considered it before. It's a good price and it's in demand. Robert, do you think farmers are finally seeing the light?
Yeah, I think probably they are, Kevin. I mean, the malting barley thing is a complete disaster. You know, it really is. You know, it's been such a traditional crop in the northeast, and it's, you know, a combination of things really. I mean, obviously the weather is had a huge impact. The again, tariffs and things on whiskey and reducing the demand for whiskey has reduced the demand for malting barley. And you know, certainly, you know, the big move into oilseed rape is really noticeable. But personally, you know, I think if I was, I'll go back to what my father said: always do the opposite of what everybody else is doing. Next year might be the year to have malting barley. You know, I wouldn't personally be changing a hell of a lot. You might put a wee bit of extra oilseed rape in, but you know, some farmers have gone clean over the top, I think, and put the whole farm into oilseed rape. And you know, I'm not sure that that's the best thing to be doing, to be honest. But yes, I think to answer your question, I think, you know, the realities of the marketplace are beginning to affect farmers perhaps more directly. And certainly in England, where, you know, the brown envelope is more or less disappeared, you know, farmers are most definitely looking at their costs a lot more. And I mean, it was quite interesting. You know, I was reading the Farmers Weekly last night, and when you come to the back pages and you see the amount of sales there is of farm machinery, and it's all obviously farmers who are either going out or they're going to contact their work in, because the cost of machinery is just totally over the top. You know, the cost of a tractor against the returns is just crazy. So, you know, I think you're right. I think a lot of farmers, there's a dose of reality perhaps come in, and that's not a bad thing perhaps, because the days I've always doing what my dad did, and I've always done it this way, you know, you need to have a broader mind than that now. Hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you. I hope you're happy with that, Kevin. You want to come back? Okay, thank you. Councillor Brace.
Yes, thanks, Chair, and thank you for the really interesting presentation. Thoroughly enjoyed that. I have a few questions stroke comments. I'm a farmer. I live at Montrose and I'm an Angus councillor. I sit on the planning committee at Angus Council. Now, we had an application in the last couple of years for a big poultry facility, and I made a comment. There were a lot of objections to it, and I made a comment on that committee saying that I thought it was a fairly straightforward application by a farmer who wanted to do farming on farmland. And I landed up being put to the Standards Commission because one of the objectors thought that that's an outrageous thing to say. It shows that there's a massive disconnect. Part of this disconnect is the fact that since the war, Second World War, a vast number of people have left the countryside, you know, people who worked in farms for generation after generation. You know, most of the country people have gone and the countryside's filled up with people who aren't many generations living in the countryside. And there's a huge disconnect, I think, as to what some people who live in the countryside really think the countryside should be for. So that is an issue. When it comes to the price of land and inheritance tax and things, well, you know, I benefited greatly from the massive bubble that seems to be around the Angus area when it comes to farmland prices when I sold a farm in the not too distant past. But you know, the actual value of land round about Montrose might be £2,500 an acre. The other £10,000 an acre of value in it is that as its well storage and tax avoidance facility. There's no doubt about that whatsoever. And I've got a very good friend who has a 230 acre farm. Some dead keen to work at home, carry on the business, and he has absolutely no chance of competing for more land at those sort of prices. And I realise this is a bubble round about where I live, but I find it really quite disgusting that a billionaire like James Dyson involved in agriculture is treated exactly like a living. That has to change. For the state of the Angus Road, Angus, that's what happens when you're 20 years at the very bottom of the council tax table. You get what you pay for. When it comes to the Lane Farms, well, I left school in 1980 at the age of 16, and when I left, every boy in my class, and they'd been working since they were, most of them 10 or 12 years old. The tatties couldn't pay for parents. They had jobs in the milk round, they had jobs as paper boys. The girls who most of them work. And if you're looking for school leavers that have absolutely no comprehension of a job, really cold. You're not going to get the same work ethic when you're starting so late in a child's development. We really need to fit out that work ethic's probably gone forever now when it comes to certain, when it comes to farm work. The input working backgrounds, that's pretty much changed. Now, how many firms are going out on the abstracted now if he's a farm worker for a big farming operation? You know? So, you know, we're not able to turn that clock back, and you know, we really need to recognise that. And obviously, the family enterprise is recognising that. We might lament it, but no point crying over spilt milk. And robots are going to be the future. Thank you very much.
As you said, you know, I'm so sorry to hear the food should be produced in the countryside. Right, I mean, you know, I think you know the planning application you addressed there. You know, there was a lot of retired people at the particular farm, retired doctors, solicitors, and that. You know, but at the end of the day, you know, still expect to go into the supermarket and pick up the free-range eggs produced locally. They still want that as well. So how does that circle square? You can't do it. You know, you need to have production. You want to have it as local as you can. You know, so I despair at some of these people. It's not my backyard. It's an NIMBY attitude, and I don't know how you change that. But councillors and planners need to be looking at a bigger picture than that. Surely they should be saying, well, okay, but you know, this guy wants to spend, you know, £2 million to, you know, create employment, create wealth, and surely that has to be a big consideration as well. Your comment about land prices, you know, is dead right now. Have a land price. There's no justification for land to be the price it is because the return of it is crazy. And anybody with any sense looking at the figures would say, why the hell are you spending money on land? But you're dead right. It's been driven up by outside influences, and Dyson is a classic example of that. Like, you know, he's got a heap of money. He invested in land to reduce his inheritance tax, and, you know, he shouldn't be treated the same as a family farm who's trying to pass it on for succession. So yeah, I take that. I fully agree with your points. And the thing about, you know, when I go think back to when I started farming, you know, all the eggs were collected by hand at that time. And I think the maximum number of kids we had working for us at the weekend, I think, was 22. And it was, you know, they started when they were 12. Even the university. And you're 100% correct. If you don't get people working when they're young, by the time they go to university and they sit in their backsides for 3 or 4 years and they're doing a hell of a lot, because a lot of these courses could be done in half the time. And when they come out, they honestly don't want to work. They honestly don't want to work. And education is very, very important, and we want to improve that. But it should, you know, there's far too many people going to university and coming out with degrees that are useless. They should be working, getting apprenticeships, learning to use their hands. And we've got to get back to a bit of that again, you know. We really do. You know, you get the teachers and the guidance people saying, oh, you've got to go to university, you've got to do this. And luckily, I think it is changing, because the cost of doing it is driving people to stop doing it, because they're coming out with huge debts and they're not getting jobs anyway. You know, so, you know, luckily, hopefully there's a change there. But no, I agree 100%. I'm sorry I had to go Angus's roads. I wasn't really aware there was an Angus councillor here, so. I'll stand by my comments, to be honest. The roads in Angus are pretty bad. You patch the patches about 10 times, I think.
Thank you for that. And yeah, it's nice to know that Aberdeenshire roads aren't as bad as Angus. We could do a press release on that. But yeah, that's a good answer, and again, the passion's coming through, and it's an educational system from a perspective. My grandson, who's doing a degree, it's not a great degree, he is considering chucking it after 2 years, because he realises that the cost of doing the degree and his loans, it's more than he's going to be earning. So why do it? You better get some practical apprenticeship or whatever. Anyway, I noticed the other chapman, Peter, you had your hand up, but it's disappeared. Are you scared of your brother?
I can't allow that to go past the chair. No, certainly not scared of my brother. Robert and I get on very well, and I have a huge admiration for how he's growing the business. And we had a pretty good business going when I was part of it, but it's a different animal altogether now. And I have a great respect for what Robert, Ethel and Ian are doing. And on the agenda, I did say that Ian was doing the presenting. That's why I got that wrong at the beginning. The only thing I would say, as councillors, we had a comment as to what this committee can do. There are quite a number of councillors on board in this committee. And I think once we can think of that, totally covered with Robert, is the planning system is far too complex, far too expensive, far too difficult. And as councillors in Aberdeenshire Council, I think this committee can put that forward to our planners and try and simplify the system, take cost out the system. And as Robert says, the planners say they're overworked and they've far too much to do. Part of the reason they're overworked and they've far too much to do is to make the system so bloody difficult. I'm sorry for swearing, but I feel very passionate about it as well. I think we need to simplify it. Now, as a committee, whether we can put some pressure on or whether the other councillors agree, I don't know, maybe they don't. but I certainly do. I've had experience of the planning system as well, and it is difficult, and it's expensive, and it's time consuming, and you get the stage as an entrepreneur and say, well, is it really worth it? Is the hassle really worth it? So I'm just backing up at Robert saying the planning thing, and I'll shut up at that point, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter, for that, and we'll take that off table and consider it again. It's something we could probably do as a group. Next on our list is Councillor Turvey.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for the presentation. Well, and yes, it takes and it just to attend local necessary extra. Talking about your experience, the way that that generation share of the knowledge and wisdom, and I think that's sometimes, and you said it's harder and harder for the farmers to hand on to the next generation if there's no interest in the family. I'm very lucky. I live in the middle of the countryside, and I can see around here we have those great families of the next generation, and the young one are still riding along their parents and grandparents, and it's just lovely to see that share of wisdom that some people may not have, not coming from that farming background. Is that something you, and I think that the group here, we can motivate, create the contact. You should be speaking to youngsters at academy or at NESCO or at and that kind of experience you have, the passion and the success, really the good success you're putting into your business here, your farming business and ex-business here, that should be shown. Like, it is an opportunity for the future generation to take on the farming business and make it successful as you did, but it has to be seen and it has to be heard, and I think that's important for people like you, with that experience, and to be able to speak to those future generation of people who may be interested. Like, oh, actually, I can reach somewhere in life with working in a farming business and grow from there. Thank you.
Right, well, thank you very much for the question. Certainly, like I say, I left school at 15. I never did anything, I never went to Clinterty, which was the thing to do with, for my kind of generation. I just came home. I learned from my father. I remember an old experienced farmer when I started saying to me, watch the people you think are doing a good job and try and emulate them. And I've done that, and I get accused by my wife, my good lady sitting next to me, when I'm driving through the countryside and they paying enough attention to the road. And that's maybe a valid point, because I'm always looking over the fence to see what successful farmers are doing. And I would like to think that maybe some of the younger generation are kind of looking at what I'm doing now. And yeah, I mean, I do try and speak to as many groups as I can. We always encourage schools and young farmers and anybody who wants to visit. We encourage everyone to come. I mean, it has been a bit harder with the bird flu because, we've got to be careful about that, but we do try and tell our story. I think we have a good story to tell, and that's why I wanted to come here and tell you guys, because, you councillors have a lot of power. And, we want to get our message across to you that, you're doing a lot of good things, but you can do a lot more. And we want you to do a lot more, and you've got to do a lot more. So, hopefully that message is maybe sunk in a wee bit, and if I've done that, well, I'll be pleased and I'll go home with a smile on my face.
Well, thank you for that. And yeah, I think you should go home with a smile on your face, because we've got the message loud and clear. Councillor Taylor.
Yes, Chair. Thank you very much indeed, Robert. Yes, you can go home with a smile on your face, I think. You maybe left school at 15, but golly, the subsequent years you've used very well. I would like to comment a little bit. It's comments more than questions. The role of this group and our refer to Kathleen's comment as what we could do. I think we need to make sure that everybody, all the councils and councillors, needs to be either listening to or reading the minutes of this particular session. And food security, I think, would be top of my list. I've always thought that if we import too much, if the market changes for whatever reason, whether it's scarcity or the supplier finds a better market elsewhere, it doesn't necessarily come here. And it may well be that they get a better price elsewhere, it doesn't come here, and as Robert has highlighted, the empty shelves will follow. Planning is an interesting aspect, and I'll give that a lot of consideration as time moves on. My final comment, Robert, is in terms of your next career. You're still a young man. Motivational speaker, maybe? I've certainly enjoyed the presentation. But then lastly, a question. You commented about your workforce being 90, most have been with you a long time. I'm suspecting that the expansion in the last 10, 15, 20 years has been substantial. It has been substantial, and you've employed a lot more in that time. I'm thinking, though, that because of that, there will be quite a number of youngsters you've employed. Or is it the mid to later years that has fueled the extra labour force? So that's the question. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Ian. I'm not sure about that clouds behind your head there. It doesn't look like turf to me, that. So I'm not sure where the hell you got that backdrop from, but hopefully it's going to bring some rain, whatever it is. But certainly the employee side of the thing, we have definitely got a split. We have got a lot of people who have been with us for 20 years, some of them getting nearly on for 30 years. And they are obviously, a lot of them coming to the end of their working life. But that loyalty doesn't seem to be in the younger generation anymore. We've had a lot of good young people. And I mean, you cannot blame a young person wanting to improve themselves and getting, a better job. But they don't seem to see progression in farming like they should do. And we do have progression. We're a business who traditionally we've always, promoted from within. We like to do that because, people have grown within the business. And our general manager, for instance, who's been with us for 26 years, started as a part-time egg collector and progressed right all the way through to being manager. So that's the kind of succession we want. But I mean, we don't find that young people want it. If you offer them responsibility, they don't seem to want responsibility. They just say, no, I'm quite happy. I'm doing what I'm doing. I don't want to leave my pals. And I suppose part of the reason is they're all making good money. 30 years ago, if you wanted to get the extra things you like in life, you had to work for them. You had to work longer, you had to work weekends, and it was just part-time expected. But now everybody seems to have everything they want. You get married and your house is totally equipped. When we got married, you had to buy bits and pieces and you built it up, but now everything's on tech, I suppose, and you never. But I mean, the need to work and progress has been reduced in society, I think. And that's part of the problem, is getting people to have this desire to progress, And I mean, it's maybe different if you go into the professions and the people who, have obviously, gone through education and done a lot of that kind of stuff to compare the kind of people, and I don't want to be derogatory in that, but in any way, but they maybe have a different outlook on life, and I just feel this work ethic, which was so strong in the Northeast, it was always here. It was never in the Central Belt like it was here, but it's disappearing fast. And if we lose that, we're going to lose a huge driving force for our economy. We really are, so I don't know where it starts, whether it's parents, it's most definitely parents, it's the education system, it's a lot of things, I think. But,
I do feel that if we lose that drive, you know, it's going to be difficult and hard for businesses to progress, because we need people to step up. We need people to want to have a bit more responsibility. But certainly that's my experience, that younger people don't want it. I mean, we do have a lot of good young people that turn up, that do what we ask them, they're polite, and they do everything they want. But that extra bit is not there anymore.
Well, thank you for that. Another, Lorna Patterson, you have a question.
Thank you, Chair. I've got one or two things I just want to cover. I'll go as fast as I can. Yeah, without sounding cheesy, I completely endorse what Councillor Taylor and I think everybody else that's spoken said about Robert's presentation. It was pretty awesome. So well done, Robert. Starting with Councillor Turvey asking what we could do, and I think Kathleen also asked about that, suggested that we need to tackle things as a group. I don't know if we've ever had Royal Northern Countryside Initiative at an SAG meeting, but it might not be a bad idea to have Alison Johnson and maybe the chair along from RNCI to hear a wee bit about the work they do in schools, both primary and secondary now. And they're also now developing, going into secondary schools to talk about careers, obviously pushing farming, agriculture. So that's one thing. And the second thing is, in terms of what could we do as a group, perhaps we could lobby as a group. We try to do it as NFU Scotland, but we'll probably look like we're a bit biased. We want Ayrshire Council, I believe, are starting to do this. We want school curriculums to include far more, and even just something on farming and agriculture in the school curriculum. That's not happening. As I said, Ayrshire are doing some sort of pilot project, I believe, at the moment. So that's one thing. I agree 100% with Councillor Chapman. Planning is a nightmare. And talking about mental health, we won't go there right now, but if you want to reduce a lot of the mental health issues in our agricultural community, get a planning sorted. I'm happy, and I'm sure there's others in the room that are happy to give some sort of supportive evidence of some of the nightmares that have happened. Obviously, Robert's got some, and Councillor Braze has got some as well, and others. Regarding Kathleen's poignant question early on about what can this group actually do, there's this thing called the Good Food Nation Bill, which is a complete nightmare in my little silly head, because I don't know what we can do with this. But maybe as a group, we, as NESAG, maybe we could try and get our heads together, because it is a problem, and it's not just a problem, it's an opportunity actually. But from a council point of view, because of budget constraints and everything else, how are you guys and girls meant to source local produce and put it into hospitals and prisons and council offices and all the rest of it at the budget constraints that you guys have? But we're going to have to do something, because that's what this bill is demanding. So is there something I don't have answers, but is there something that we could do collaboratively to try and prove and change some of the things we're doing to make sure that we do something better to suffice this Good Food Nation Bill and what it's supposed to deliver? One thing I heard at the Huntly Hearth the other day, just as an example, was there's this restaurant week. I think I've got that right. Restaurant week. And I met this lady. It used to be an Access. She worked, Bridget Freeman. She used to work in an Access department division within Aberdeenshire Council, and she's now more to do with food and so on. Don't really understand exactly what it is. That's probably quite clear in the way I'm speaking here. But anyway, what I was quite inspired by is Bridget does like farmers and farming. She's been used to working with them, so that's a big bonus for a start. Her job is, I think it ends at the end of this year. Hopefully it'll be recommissioned. But in listening to her, she's doing a lot of stuff to promote in this restaurant week thing, which I think will last a fortnight and probably is ongoing. But there's something in here, and I was going to have a word with Keith about it, and I probably still should, so that I understand it a bit better. But maybe as a group, we need to collaborate a bit more and recognise that that is actually something that Aberdeenshire Council should be. I'm sure you are proud of it, but maybe pushing it a bit harder, higher up the political arena, to prove that this is, you're actually promoting local producers, that, you know, somebody like Robert that's producing eggs very locally and supplying them to local people as well as national. Restaurant thing is allowing a marketing vehicle which helps Aberdeenshire Council and helps all these local producers as well. I'd only heard about it at Huntly Hurst. That's probably my naivety, but that is something that we need to showcase more, and it would be great for Aberdeenshire Council, and it'd be great for some of our local producers that probably don't know anything about it. And the last thing, and I will be quiet, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, one thing that I would ask, this is an imminent thing, this is something that's happening next Wednesday. I wrote to some councillors last night, sorry if I haven't included you in this, but we're supporting Farmers to Action, who are another group, voluntary group of farmers down south primarily, but we are helping them with this Trailers for Truth, which is trailers travelling from all parts of the world, all parts of the country, United Kingdom, to arrive in Liverpool with messages primarily about inheritance tax and how it could completely wreck the economy for everybody, not just for farmers. So we're doing this Trailers for Truth campaign. It's not NFU Scotland. I'd love if it was, but it's not. It's Farmers to Action, but we're supporting it, and we would love to see some councillors there as well. So you could sign your name on the banner that will then go all the way down to Liverpool, and we've got a lot of the press coming. And yeah, if you want something to do to help support our industry, that's something you could do next Wednesday. It's 9:30 at Huntly Mart, and there's another opportunity about 12 o'clock at Marshall's Farm Shop on E96, and I will be quiet now. Sorry for taking up all that time, Councillor. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't think there's a question that Robert could answer on that, is there?
No, I don't think there is, Mr. Chairman. But as always, Lorna has lots of good, valid points. And as far as communication goes, nobody can fault the effort that Lorna puts in. She's a stalwart of the Northeast industry, that's for sure. So thanks for your input as always, Lorna.
Thanks for that. And Lorna, I hope at the Hearst you bought some ice cream for me. I don't think you did, because I had purple for polio ice cream for sale, and I hope you bought some. It was really nice. Right, our next question. We're jumping a wee bit for time. I think we've got one more question, perhaps of Phil Reid, and then we'll go on to our next topic.
Thanks very much, Chair, and I'll be quick. And thanks very much, Robert, for your presentation. It's always a fantastic, great growth story to hear. Before coming onto this meeting, I was actually in a conference call about the economic outlook for the UK. And one of the interesting points made was the UK business optimism level was actually improving. And that is coming off of quite a low base. I noticed in your presentation that you made decisions, obviously, to expand your business 6, maybe even 12 months ago, when UK optimism was at a lot lower a level. And it perhaps reflects your comments about you being doing the opposite of other businesses, or doing the opposite of what the market is doing. But I was just wondering, you also highlighted quite a lot of challenges and upcoming difficulties, if you like, in the market, the upcoming budget. I was just wondering what your optimism is at this point. You've obviously made the decision to expand 6-12 months ago. What's your business optimism at the moment, and do you see that expansion plans continuing, or just kind of what's your thoughts, Robert?
Thank you, Phil. No, most definitely. I'm most definitely a glass half full guy. I do despair at a lot of farmers because, they never ever seem to see any opportunities in front of them, and sometimes just staring like the nose in your face, I sometimes think. But they've got their heads down, and they're not looking at how they could improve and make their business better. So my optimism is very, very high, and I'll finish on saying that everybody should be eating more eggs, because eggs are wonderful. They are nature's convenience food. They are full of goodness, and let's eat more and more eggs, because the egg consumption in the UK is about 100 eggs per person less than some parts, even Europe. So, you know, there's a huge opportunity to produce more egg to feed the population of the UK. And like I say, it is a tremendous food. It is one of the best foods you can eat. And you have a cooked breakfast before you go out and have a couple of eggs, and it sets you up for the whole day. So thank you, Phil, for the opportunity to get my plug in about eggs, because I didn't want to do that in my speech, but you know, I do feel passionate about eggs because they are such a wonderful food. So please, and buy them out of Aldi in a little.
I don't think any of us could disagree. Yes. Right, okay. Fatima, you had a quick question quickly, do you?
Yeah, it's just an action point for you to, no, it's not a question. It's just an action point for you, Chair. It's just off the back of what Lorna said regarding the Good Food Nations bill. So I was wondering if you wanted to maybe have a think about us tabling a motion to council to ask that departments integrate the principles of Good Food Nation. It's the 2022 bill I think Lorna was referring to. So it might be something that we can do to help address some of the concerns that we're facing, so it can be integrated in planning, education, health, possibly.
Yeah, we're on that. Actually, there is an action going to be taken on that. The Good Food Bill, if it's done properly, could be a very positive mechanism, but if it's done incorrectly, it could do some damage to the sector, perhaps. I don't know, but we'll see where it goes. And yes, your comments are well said. Thank you. Kathleen, you have a question?
Yeah, it's just a wee word of caution. I've noted a couple of times during this conversation that we're very Aberdeenshire focused. There are other councils in the area, so if we're talking about motions, consideration for other councils as well would be appreciated if we're going to do this as a joined up group. It's not an Aberdeenshire committee, this.
Totally agree, Kathleen. Your point is well made, and we're not, hopefully, we take your point very seriously. We will not talk about Aberdeenshire anymore. There is actually an Aberdeen councillor here in the chamber, and he's growling at me too. So no more Aberdeenshire. It's the North East Scotland Agricultural Advisory Group. Sorry?
That's probably my fault, Mr. Chair. Kathleen, sorry, because it was me that spoke about Aberdeenshire. So sorry, Murray, Angus, Aberdeen City. Sorry, I apologise. That's my stupidity. Thank you.
There's no need to apologise. The comments well made, and we'll make sure that the roads in Angus are nearly as good as the ones in Aberdeenshire in the future. Thank you. Well, thank you, Robert. That was a very good presentation. I think it's one of the best presentations we've had for a long time. Very informative, and it gives us lots of us, everyone here, food for thought. And you've given us lots of points to think about, and hopefully we'll get some constructive something constructive going forward as far as policy is concerned. But thank you for that. Should we take a break now before the next presentation? A quick break, are we okay? Or we just continue? A couple of minutes to get some water and powder our noses. And we're back in a few minutes. Thank you.